Hello, Willowbrook family. Today's deep dive is into Genesis, chapter 41, verses 46 through 57. If you knew that there were going to be some really hard times coming your way, how would you prepare? If there were going to be financially hard times, you'd save your money. Just because you have some extra money every now and then doesn't mean you have to spend it. But you'd also probably prepare in more ways than just financially. You'd prepare mentally and spiritually, because hard times are just that, hard times. They can take their toll on you, so you need to be ready. This is what we see in our passage today. Joseph had interpreted Pharaoh's dream and told him that 7 years of plenty were coming. And then he warned him that right after the 7 years of plenty, there were going to be 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was impressed with Joseph. He made him the number 2 man in all of Egypt, and Joseph was only 30 years old at the time. It's hard to imagine that only 13 years earlier, Joseph was rotting in prison. God can do great things. Well, things started happening in Egypt just as Joseph had said. For the first 7 years, they had a bumper crop of grain, and Joseph went all over Egypt, making sure the excess grain was stored away safely. In fact, the blessings of grain were so massive that Joseph just stopped counting how much grain they were putting away. They were up to their eyeballs in grain, and that was a good thing, because famine was on its way, and it was going to be bad. Not only would this famine devastate Egypt, it would affect the whole world, even Joseph's hometown. Now, while Joseph was preparing for the hard times by saving grain, he was also preparing mentally and spiritually. During the time of plenty, he had 2 sons by his Egyptian wife. He named his firstborn son Manasseh, which means causing to forget. God had made Joseph forget all his troubles from his days at home when he was growing up. This shows us an important insight into how Joseph was preparing. He didn't want to live in the past. You know, it's important to learn from your past and your past mistakes, but you can't live there because it's over and it's gone. And God wants you to live in the present and prepare for the future. Joseph named his second-born son Ephraim, which means double fruitfulness, because God made Joseph fruitful in the land of oppression, Egypt. Basically, God wants you to bloom where he plants you. And sometimes you'll find that he has planted you in a place that you don't want to be at first. But be patient and obedient, because God always has a plan. And there's another insight into the names of these sons. You can't bloom where you planted if you are still living in the past. Think about that. Live in the present and prepare for the future. Here's one final insight into the names of his sons. Joseph used Hebrew names, even though he had a great position of influence in Egypt and their mother was Egyptian. Joseph never forgot who he was and the God he worshiped, the one true God of Israel. So, how do you prepare for hardship? Don't waste the resources God gives you. Don't live in the past. Bloom where God plants you, even if it's not where you want to be. And never, ever forget our God and who he made you to be. Have a great day in the Lord, Willowbrook.